Hopefully the volume should be okay. I've tried to mess around with the settings, but in this segment we're going to be talking about UK regulators fumbling in the dark after Brexit, a report finds. And this is important because a lot of the regulatory stuff was done by the EU. Obviously, they would have member states' consent along with the EU Parliament, but now the UK has to do all the regulations on our own. And that's why, doing things like the UKCA mark, making people jump through another set of regulatory hurdles alongside something like the CE mark made no sense. And you can imagine how bad it would be for regulators to have to deal with that on top of dealing with the new regulatory burden they have to deal with. And essentially, for now, we are copying the EU's homework, but for certain chemicals, we are doing a worse job. So key UK regulators covering food and chemical safety are fumbling around in the dark after Brexit, the chair of an influential parliamentary committee has said. A new National Audit Office report revealing how 3 regulators have been cut off from EU safety data. They've not necessarily been cut off, we cut ourselves off. It's an important distinction to make. This was done by our own hand, and cannot recruit enough qualified staff to do their job in protecting the public from food risks and chemical safety. So we've heard this from the regulatory agency that dealt with the vaccines. They're struggling for money essentially because they used to get a lot of contracts from the EU. They're not getting those anymore, and now you've got different regulatory agencies that are dealing with things not the best, should we say. They're struggling to recruit staff because the expertise you would need to work in these fields is very specific. And of course, without freedom of movement, we've lost access to 600 million people, or however many people live in the EU. It's just wild. The National Audit Office looked at 3 regulators, so I don't know if they looked at more regulators or if they looked at these 3 specifically for whatever reason, and it's pretty grim. So you've got the Food Standards Agency, who deal with obviously food safety, the Competition and Markets Authority, which would deal with businesses most likely, and the Health and Safety Executives, who would deal with chemicals. Yeah, that's not great when you've got the people who are meant to deal with food and the people who are meant to deal with chemicals not being able to do their jobs properly. That does not sound very good, does it? After the UK left the EU, the 3 regulators had to build from scratch. And I don't know why they had to do that when we already had they would have known the existing EU regulations on it. Surely they could have built from that rather than starting from scratch. The new regulatory systems and recruit hundreds of qualified staff to run them. So I don't know why they didn't start from where the EU left off like other agencies have done. Very strange. The report reveals that they failed to find enough vets and toxicologists to do the job and had to introduce 5-year training programs to get new staff properly qualified. It takes around 5 years to become a vet. And so what you can gather from this is vets are very much in demand right now, because of not just because of a lot more people have pets nowadays, but also because the vets are needed at the borders as well. Combine that with the need for these agencies to have vets, you have a very toxic combination there. Toxicologists, again, that's another one where they would be needed to check the toxicity of foods and chemicals. They're in a scarcity apparently as well. So these agencies are having to pay out to train people up, and what happens if at the end of it they just leave? All 3 regulators have lost access to data and information sharing with EU regulators. Again, that could have been something they had in the trade and cooperation agreement. We didn't negotiate for it, apparently. But then again, why would the EU give us access to their regulators when that costs money? Regulations, having agencies to deal with stuff costs a lot of money. Why would the EU give us freebies? This is which they say has negatively impacted their ability to assess risks and carry out their own work. Decisions between the EU and the UK on how to improve cooperation has not yet started, and to be fair, I doubt it is. These systems, having these agencies again is expensive, and if the UK is not willing to pay in to help these regulators, why would the EU bother? That combined with the fact that some of these regulators were based in the UK and they had to leave the UK at the end of Brexit, so we've lost a lot of jobs and expertise just that alone. The FSA, the Food Standards Agency, has lost access to the rapid alert system for food and feed, which is obviously very scary given that the African swine flu is kicking around amongst other diseases. This is used to exchange information about food safety risks and response across the EU. So this would help the EU shut down any kind of outbreaks. Instead, civil servants now have to scour public announcements to find out about food safety risks. So do you know what they're doing? essentially they probably have to go on Twitter with notifications on whenever specific agencies tweet about anything. That's probably what they're doing. I can't imagine it going any other way. The report says it requires about 65% more resources to deliver the same international information exchange on food safety incidents than it did using the EU system. So this system we have, which was meant to, Brexit was meant to cut red tape here, is incredibly more bureaucratic and slower than the EU systems. That's crazy. The Food Standards Agency has been hit with an upsurge from an unexpected 150 to 428 new products needing approval. That could be just products in general that need new approval because of Brexit, or just that's how many products typically pop up, between 150 to 428, and all of that has to go through regulators before it can be put onto the market. Is also hit by getting very little advance notice of new EU food safety regulations, which have to be implemented in Northern Ireland under the terms of the protocol. So again, that's an area where maybe they can make an exception because of the need for exports from GB to Northern Ireland to have to use EU regulations. Maybe that's somewhere where they can get something from the EU in terms of advance notice. Because at the end of the day, if the EU do make changes, which they're entitled to do, but then again, those changes, they're all made in the EU Parliament anyways, right? It has to go through the EU Parliament, so depending on how much advance notice they would need, they would know if the EU is proposing some sort of change, so it'd have to be voted on. Meanwhile, changes at the CMA have affected consumer protection, which again isn't great. Consumer protection is incredibly important. The UK has no longer has a legal gateway to share confidential data with the EU and member states on consumer protection cases. This means that a French consumer enforcement agency that is taking forward a case that has affected UK consumers no longer has the legal means to share details of its investigation with the CMA. So what that means essentially is, if there's, say, a multinational company, this would mostly affect them, right, where a French consumer has been impacted by fraud or some sort of allegation, the French authorities would immediately share that with the UK agency as well, or would have immediately shared that with the UK agency as well, so they could, check out what's going on and put forward a joint case. Now that's not going to happen. So if UK consumers are impacted by a multinational alongside kind of EU nationals, they'll have to take a separate case forward, which again costs money. You're going to have your own set of lawyers, your own set of issues you're going to have to take to court, essentially. The regulation of chemicals has also been affected, with the HSE having to extend expired licenses for some chemicals because it no longer has access to EU data on them. And again, they have to start from scratch. It's going to be incredibly difficult for them to do so. Also support the Byline Times. They do good work. The cost of replicating testing data has been estimated to be 800 million by industry, the report says. So doing all of this stuff right alone will cost 800 million pounds a year. Is that? See, it doesn't say if it's a yearly cost, but I'm assuming it must be something close to that. To address these concerns, DEFRA extended the deadline. So essentially what they've done is they've said, look, we can't check all of these dangerous chemicals. And DEFRA said, all right, you've got more time to check them. Are these chemicals on the market? Because it sounds like they might be. This was set in an initial transitional provisions for companies to meet the full data requirements between October 23 and October 27. So they have, almost till the end of the decade to give DEFRA the reports on how dangerous these chemicals are. That's just wild to me, honestly. Especially if these chemicals are on the market. And if they're not, why would they bother, going through all of these hurdles to sell in the UK? It wouldn't make sense. Hillier said that Brexit heaped more work onto UK regulators, but progress is hampered by shortfalls in skills and the door being closed to EU data sharing. So essentially what you've got is you have a multitude of problems here. So let's go through them, which is the UK cannot copy the EU's homework anymore. There's a massive shortage of skills in the UK to deal with that, and it takes a long time to train up for these roles, and there's no guarantee that these people even stay on. And also the fact that without freedom of movement, EU workers will need visas to come here, and it's far easier to find work in another EU member state if you're a vet or a toxicologist than it is to go through all the hurdles in the UK. So why would you come here unless we offer a boatload of money? And there are a lot of EU rich nation states. I don't know where these regulators have gone, the ones that left the UK, but no doubt they'll be hiring as well. there is a building tension between the high-minded talk of new Brexit freedoms and what it means in practice for regulations, because unless we deregulate the chemical industry completely, they still have to go through regulators, and any new chemical exporters that want to export to the UK will also have to go through a secondary set of regulators. So they'll go through the EU regulators to export to the EU, and then they have to deal with the UK ones as well, and it might not be worth it for them. I don't know how often these chemicals are checked. Honestly, they should be checked every few years, especially if there are changes to the chemical balances or components, depending on how things go. But the simple fact is, I don't know how this one's going to play out. The government must clearly light the way to prevent regulators fumbling around in the dark, but the thing is, the government don't care about this sort of stuff. Gareth Davies, head of the National Audit Office, said Brexit had a major impact on UK regulators because we were very reliant on the EU to deal with this stuff. Now we're on our own. It's essential that regulators and policymakers develop their future strategies as soon as possible to avoid wasting effort on the short-term work and to ensure their decisions, the decisions they make now meet the longer-term goals, he added. So it all depends on what the UK's goals are here. If the UK wants decent regulations where we keep out dangerous chemicals, I mean, if you look at America, for example, right? I swear there's a case every few years where some sort of chemical has given people cancer or sorts of other, really bad illnesses. I'm not going to name any for fear of being sued, but if you check out Ring of Fire, they normally cover quite a few stories. I used to in the past. They used to cover a lot of stories about different chemicals, different products giving people cancer, and there were a lot of court cases around them with payouts. I do not want the UK to end up like that. I don't want the UK to be, allowing products that that give people cancer, essentially, and then once it comes out, they get sued in the end. You get a payout, but at the end of the day, your life has been shortened dramatically, and you have to go through really, really harsh kind of processes to get better. Chemotherapy is no joke, man. Chemotherapy is no joke at all. I do not want to see that in the UK. So it's very scary to me that the UK regulators have no idea what they're doing. I don't blame them necessarily because, again, they don't have the staff that they need. Combined with the fact that they were very much underprepared for this situation to play out, and without access to the EU databases, it's going to be a huge problem for the UK. But anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.